Data is the last frontier of colonization. They took our land and then tried to sell it back to us. Now they're taking our data and trying to sell it back to us as a service. This idea of just perpetuating the colonial dynamics. Wealthy countries get to come into poorer countries and do whatever they want, extract whatever resources they want. Not just data, right? Also critical minerals and all of the things that you need to build data centers and labor and everything, but always to contribute to the strengthening of the economies of the rich countries to help them get richer. Why are we doing that? Like, why are we repeating history on this front and increasing inequality around the world under the guise of supporting a technology that's supposed to be an equalizer and leveling the playing field globally?
Why do you think these nation states make that kind of a pitch? Like, what is in it for domestic policymakers and leaders to offer up their population and their resources to this global north colonial structure?
They want to have a seat at the table, and the way to have a seat at the table is to find the role that they can play and to make themselves indispensable in some kind of way to the global supply chain of AI development. It is really hard to figure out when you don't have capital, like what to offer instead. And the easiest thing at that point is to offer your people, your minerals, and your data. That said, I absolutely recognize and I sympathize with the position that they're in, because one of the reasons why they're only able to offer these things is because of also the history of colonialism dispossessing them of the strong economic growth that is experienced by global north countries today. And so within this particular framework, they feel a bit handcuffed in what they can actually do to get into the room and have that access. What we're seeing today with the way that Silicon Valley is orchestrating the development of AI systems is pretty much a match with how empires of old operated. They're consolidating an extraordinary amount of economic and political power by dispossessing the majority of things like their resources, their land, their labor, their data, by exploiting that labor in ways where even as that labor is contributing to the expansion of the empire and accruing more value to the empire, they are not seeing it themselves. Also, empires engage in control of information flows where they censor inconvenient truths that undermine their imperial agenda. And we see the AI industry engage in that as well by how they control what science is ultimately produced about the fundamental capabilities or limitations of AI systems. And we just don't have a clear picture of that anymore, in the same way that we wouldn't have a clear picture of that if most climate scientists in the world were bankrolled by fossil fuel companies. I think the last important dimension to recognize is that there's a kind of quasi-religious element to a lot of the push for the AI empire, in the same way that religion was a really crucial part of colonial empires as well, where there is both this narrative that these companies are the good empire on a civilizing mission to bring progress and modernity to humanity. So there's this moralizing tenet that drives what they're doing, but also it's undergirded by these like fears around AI potentially going rogue and devastating humanity. And that is why they need to have supreme control over the development of this technology, because if it falls into the hands of the bad actor, that could be total obliteration of the human race.
Are there ways for them to participate in what's going on without kind of opting into the system that they probably politically know is problematic?
A lot of countries are trying to figure out right now how to plug into a game that's already been defined by the US and by Silicon Valley. Pretty much anyone that's not the US or China, like any country that is trying to grapple right now with like what is our role in AI in general, should not be trying to just think, how do we insert ourselves into what Silicon Valley is trying to do and try to mirror or replicate or take inspiration from this large scale approach paradigm to AI development. They should be thinking about like, what are the opportunities that AI could help unlock in our country? What are the problems that we actually need to solve? And then what are the types of AI systems that we should be developing independent of the vision that is being exported from San Francisco that is localized to the resources and the culture and the challenges that we actually have within like the African continent, for example. There's been a long history of this with deep learning in Daba and with Masakane, with organizations that have actually just thought like, how do we design AI by Africans for Africans by using these tools as ways to preserve our language rather than to continue eroding away and having English dominate, by helping farmers increase their agricultural crop, by supporting the increased resilience of the electric grid. And I think that's actually much more visionary than just trying to build your own version of a large language model or by trying to insert yourself into the massive, completely unnecessary global supply chain that is being used to support this pursuit of ever more skill and power consolidation among the wealthy elite in San Francisco.
What role do you see communities playing, and what opportunities are there, do you think, for people that are actually living in these countries to participate in discourse about the future of AI?
I think there's a huge role for communities to play in really pushing to advance a different vision of AI development by really articulating when they are being harmed, when they disagree with the current approach and the current pace of things. And especially within democratic environments, to hold their governments accountable and also hold corporate actors accountable. Like, I talk in my book about this Chilean group, Mosacat, that really mobilized to block a proposed Google data center within their community because they were not consulted. The company was proposing to extract an extraordinary amount of freshwater resources from that community. And they were able to go on the streets, educate their neighbors, educate the local government, and bring so much attention to this fight that it did catch the attention of Google Mountain View and of the Chilean government and forced each of these actors to come to the table and listen to the community about what they actually need. And now Google is in the process of trying to make concessions, and the Chilean government has to contend now with many other communities that have blossomed all across Chile and all across Latin America and all across the world that are modeled after the Mosacat effort. Narrative is a huge pillar that props up the empire. And their narrative only works when there's a vacuum of other information about what the actual reality of the impact of their technologies are, because their narratives are detached from reality. They talk about abundance, they talk about utopia, they talk about theoretical risks like everyone dying, and this is just not rooted in the reality of what is actually happening today with real people, average people all around the world. Communities don't even have to be organizing an intense protest action like Mosaic had. Simply just voicing and documenting and raising awareness to either journalists or directly through their own communication channels about like what they are seeing within their communities helps to fill in that vacuum and weaken the ability of these companies to manipulate the narrative and then capture nation state governments and other like more powerful elite actors.
Are there ways of using AI systems that you feel like are good examples that you think we could direct more attention to, and away from some of these like scaled general purpose model applications that obviously require so much energy and feel like kind of a cul-de-sac of innovation?
Yeah, in general, I want to see smaller models, more specialized models, and more models that are developed with more participation from the communities that will actually be using or have the models used on them. Examples that I often give are like the nonprofit Climate Change AI. They've documented all of these different ways that specialized AI models can actually help advance and tackle very specific aspects of the climate change mitigation problem. And none of them have anything to do with either large language models or large scale AI models in general, but they're all about things like improving grid resiliency, improving renewable energy integration on the grid, optimizing the energy demand of a building or even a city, optimizing traffic, optimizing supply chains. You know, these are like things that are the actual practical ways that we can make dents on not just the quality of life for people, but also these much bigger challenges. This one size fits all model of AI development is inherently so problematic and colonial. And if we can shift away from that to thinking about a multitude of small, specialized, localized models that are much more controlled and governed by each individual community, I think we will be in a much more democratic place with AI development.